Welcome to the ZNL Podcast, a podcast brought to you by ZN, the OG digital agency in Brussels.
Welcome to this episode of ZNL. I am very, very happy to have a special guest today, someone I met a few times before, and we had the privilege of working on an EU Influencer Masterclass. Because Olivia is herself an expert at many different things, actually ranging from communication, the institutions, and herself a content creator. Welcome. How are you today?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure. As you said, we met way before this, and I am very good, very happy to be here chatting with you. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you so much for joining us. And I want to start just by asking you to tell us a little bit about your story. So, what brought you to Brussels? And you worked in quite a few different organizations, and then you started to become a content creator. So where did you start and how did you end up creating content and why?
Well, I came to Brussels in September 2022, but I have worked in communication before. Actually, I was living in the UK and I was very active in my university. I worked with the Scottish team during the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham because I was studying there. So I volunteered in the digital communication team. Also, I have really always liked social media. When I was back in my country in Spain, I used to also collaborate with my basketball team because I also play basketball in social media, helping them. So I had already a background, but it was more like volunteering in a way. And then I got selected to do a traineeship in Brussels, specifically at the Council of the European Union. I was in the communication team, but not in social media, but again, I was helping them because I really like it. And that's what brought me to Brussels mainly. Also because this traineeship was specifically for persons with disabilities, because I have a disability myself. I use hearing aids. So that was the first experience I had in Brussels. Then I moved to another organization that is Inclusion Europe, which is the organization that fights for the rights of persons with intellectual disabilities in Europe. And I was in social media there, so I started to gain more expertise in social media communication in the EU bubble. And then finally, I did another internship, and this time it was at the parliament, but in political communication with one of the political groups. So it was very good for me to have these three types of communication ways of communicating, no, in organizations, also political and also institutions. And myself, I started on social media as Olivia because when I arrived here, I felt that there were not many people who were talking about the EU on social media, and for me it was a bit surprising because I mean it's the main source of information for young people. So that was like the first thing that I thought about when I decided to open my account, but also because all these experiences working inside the institution, I saw a really lack of representation of persons with disabilities in this world. So I also wanted to share my experience as a person with hearing loss with disabilities working in European international affairs, show my experience, and also talk about what the EU is doing for persons with disabilities, which is very niche, but at the same time very important. And I knew I wanted to reach audiences outside the EU institution. So I use all this experience, expertise that I was getting in Brussels to put it in my personal account. And this is what I have been doing since already more than 3 years.
So I think it's very interesting because you were doing certain jobs, internships, and then professional jobs. Now, how much of what you were posting was directly related to your work? Was it actually part of your work or was it personal and you did this outside of work, and did it overlap? I mean, are these two separate worlds, two separate personas, or are they now merging into one since you're doing communication?
Yeah, well, it was a mix of both things because I was very sure I didn't want to focus all my content in me and my job because I knew that I was not going to stay in the institution after my traineeship or not in an organization, or I didn't want people to know me because of my job. I wanted really to people to know me as an expert in the EU disability rights, building a brand because of that. So of course I was sharing part of my experiences, but maybe like more on stories, on Instagram stories, or more in a friendly way rather than having actual videos about one this part of my life, like professionally. I wanted to create content about the EU, about disability, different covering different topics, what is going on right now, really inform people outside this EU bubble. But of course I wanted still to keep it eh, friendly in a way, and people to know me as Olivia as well. So I always share part of my professional life and also private life in a way. I didn't want to become an institution like only posting on Instagram and that's it. Also like showing part of my life, and that of course the my job was included, but I started when I was in a trainee in this organization after the Council of the European Union. So I posted about my internship there, then I posted about my internship in the parliament, and now of course I share part of my job at the European Youth Forum where I am now. Everything is related to the European Union, so I think people are really interested about that. So yeah, I try to balance it.
See, I think what's really interesting is that you're communicating and you're doing it very well. You know, we've identified you as one of the top EU influencers. Obviously, having reach on your channels, you have to maintain TikTok and Instagram. These are not the typical channels for EU institutions. Now this is changing slowly, but it certainly wasn't when you were doing it. So when you post, are you checking this with your employer? Is it something that's your own territory and you can post, or how do you balance, if you have an opinion that might be different from the organization? A lot of creators have this dilemma. So I'm curious about what's your policy on that?
Well, I'm at the end of the day, I'm a person and it's my account and freedom of speech and expression exists, no? So, of course, I don't have to double check, but also when I was a trainee in the institution, I was not double checking. I think it's more that what you can post or you cannot post in a way. Like, for example, I'm working in an organization representing young people. Of course, I'm not going to post something that goes against young people, but because it's also something that I don't think myself as a person, will be a bit contradictory if someone is working for something and then as a person is sharing something else. So of course I can say whatever I want. I am very lucky that in the organization that I work and all my colleagues are very supporting. In a way, it's not only that they allowed me to live also my life experiences and accept collaborations and that, but they also encourage me to continue doing it. Of course, it's still an organization, so sometimes we can have a bit conflict of interest in terms of who I can work or not, like commissioners or something like that. That can be a bit more tricky, but it's not about what I'm saying, like, so for it's fine, but I understand the dilemma that many creators can have. But still, like, I put on my Instagram and TikTok that everything that is present there, all the views are mine, are personal views. I'm not representing any kind of organization, so I guess that's clear from my side.
Yeah, it's interesting because people who are doing that kind of work, and a lot of the people who were doing the EU influencer masterclass, were people who felt they wanted to communicate, but it wasn't really directly their job. I mean, sometimes they have the title of communicator at their job, but the desire comes from a different place. I think it's like there's something you want to express. Now, I want to go back to the channel because obviously I imagine that you've chosen TikTok and Instagram because you felt more comfortable in those channels, but you also did it before the EU had recognized this. I mean, we're in July now. The commission has, well, the council has started to invite creators to events, giving them permission to attend. So it's almost like they recognized, I would say a bit late, that these people like you, as creators, matter. Now, what do you feel about Brussels and the institutions and their understanding of social media? Do you think that they are starting to get it? Are they very far behind? And were you kind of frustrated at the beginning when you were like using channels that clearly the institutions were not using? So how do you feel about the disconnect between the reality of how young people consume information and how the institutions are using it?
Yes, well, first, I totally agree with you with the fact that it's nice that they have started to invite creators, but maybe a bit late, in the opinion. But also, there is a big change between institutions I'm seeing because the Parliament and the Commission started to do it way earlier than the Council. The Council is doing it since like a year ago, something like that. Um, yeah, I mean, I think it's positive. I think it's positive that they are doing it. In terms of channels, I remember I was a bit frustrated some years ago with TikTok because no institution was on TikTok and only
Mhm.
the parliament started, and it was a move ahead of the elections, which is smart, but still a bit late considering that TikTok was already very, very big, especially among young people from 13 years old. And I have seen, in my opinion, I don't know what other creators will think, but in the last months, I have seen a shift in how people behave on TikTok. I explain myself. Like before, I had the feeling that TikTok was run by a specific, I don't know how to explain, like people or ways of thinking. It was more maybe even closer to the far right in a way when we talk about politics. But now, at least in Spain, for example, I have seen that many politicians, progressive politicians, or even institutions are joining that platform in a way to fight back. And now I have seen that there are way more people, like, for example, the Spanish president in there, the prime minister in there, and people engage, and people who are going to read the comments on those platforms don't only see one side of the story, but they see the other one as well because those people are starting to be in those platforms. So this is something that frustrated me a bit, that no one was talking about the EU on TikTok,
Mhm.
because if you said European Union, if you write European Union on TikTok, most of the videos are mine. Now you see the European Parliament, and I hope to see other institution and also organization in there. It's very needed because you cannot reject the reality. The reality is that many young people are there, so you also have to be there. I understand there are many concerns, but well, before we legislate, we also need to be there to understand what's going on that platform. That's my opinion. And in terms of creators being invited to institutions, I think it's positive. It's very positive because for now they are invited to visit and understand what they do, how it works, how decisions are made. Another thing will be if the creators are invited like journalists to meetings or something like that. That I would say we will need reflection about it, because we will need to see a couple of things. So, but in general, I think it's positive, and let's see how this develops.
Yeah, you talked about TikTok. Very interesting because in our analysis, and we're talking about Brussels, it's basically now LinkedIn is the big platform, and the upcoming platform is Instagram with the newer generation, with TikTok being still quite far outside of the EU bubble conversation. So I'm interested to hear because you're active on both. I think more so on Instagram, unless I'm mistaken, but I see you have at least more followers on Instagram. So I'm curious about whether you think these are uh, platforms that should be treated equally, or that you think that Instagram is now becoming a more mature channel in Brussels, and that maybe TikTok will come later. And do you spend any time on platforms like LinkedIn or X, for example?
I do use LinkedIn as well, and I also post there, but I am not as active as on Instagram or TikTok, of course. And X, I have it, but unfortunately, like I stopped using it because I don't really agree with the current atmosphere in there. And so yeah, I do not post there. It for me is Instagram and TikTok the main account, but also LinkedIn. But LinkedIn is more professionally, and maybe coming back to what you mentioned before, that I chose this platform because I think it's allowed me to be more creative and to really be myself in there. And also in on Instagram specifically, you can also post stories. That for me is very important because I can show bits of my personal life without having these photos or videos all the time in there permanently. So I think, yeah, that's why I chose these platforms.
And the EU is I think you can say struggles to communicate to young people, let alone the public at large. I mean, the reality is that there's still a disconnect between institutions, the language of the institutions, and young people. So, what do you tell people? And I'm sure you meet a lot of communicators in the institutions. You're there right now. Um, what do you tell communicators they need to do differently or better to start reaching the public?
Something that I always say is that you have to speak the language of the audience you want to reach. I understand that it's a bit difficult when you are working in the EU bubble to move far from the slang or the way we have to explain things because we are very used to it. Even me, it's sometimes very hard to explain these technical things in an engaging and easy way. But we have to do it if we really want to reach other people and especially young people, talk their language. And it's very important to tell them how that specific thing affects them. So if you're talking about, I don't know, the internship directive that we have, they are debating if internship should be unpaid internship should be banned or not. Instead of talking about it like internship directive, you have to tell them like the European Union might be fighting for your rights, might be fighting for you to get paid, for you not to be exploited, So that's why you reach people. That's why you reach young people. You make them understand that the decision that are taken here and everything that is happening here affects them in a way. So in terms of communication, of course, is it's difficult and it's a challenge, but we have to do it if we want to reach people outside the bubble.
And does that mean the institutions need to work more with creators, or they need to become creators themselves?
Both things I think can be done two ways, because working with creators is means that the creator is gonna explain things their way to reach their people and to do it in a way that they they get what they want. No,
Mhm.
like I see the challenge is that Now on social media, many creators, specifically those who are doing it full time, is that there is a big part of their interest that is getting likes, getting engagement, getting exposure. So there is like a line, a very tight line that is okay. Maybe I'm saying this in a way that is not completely true, but it's gonna give me a lot of followers, a lot of engagement, a lot of. So that's why I'm not saying only the institution have to work with creators, but it needs to be a balance, because we need to keep accuracy and fact checks in a way. But I also creators that talk about the EU. From my experience, we are quite good on that. We share things that we have fact checked before. So let's see.
Yeah, I think there's a very interesting and vibrant community of creators in Brussels. Some of them, that we've met in those meetings, who are really, they just want to tell a story. They want to learn how to do it better, but they are deeply passionate about the EU. Now, I imagine that this is one of the reasons you've started to communicate, because you wanted to express something around topics that you felt strongly about. So my question is, what is the main thing you want to communicate? And do you feel, or have you seen that some of your content has reached people and changed their minds, both public and institution?
Yes, I have a lot of examples actually. I think I have a great community. So as I said before, I wanted to communicate about the EU and the rights of persons with disabilities, what is happening here that affect the life of persons with disabilities, because I have a disability myself, so it's very close to my heart. It was my main goal, my main aim when I decided to open this. I didn't want to just be on social media talking about the EU, getting invited to fancy places and events or anything like that. That was not my main goal. Really, I wanted to increase the representation of persons with disabilities in this world using social media. It's kind of a project for me. And well, I'm also doing a PhD in the focus on the European Union and disability. So I guess that's like an extra reason why I am doing this, that it was not only just to be on social media. So for me, that is the main topic, and it's close to my heart. And I have a great community, and I have a lot of examples that my work has been positive, has reached others. For example, like commissioners started to follow me, many organizations started to follow me, even representations of the EU in other countries. Then I was getting a lot of messages from the very beginning, from people telling me that they have never seen anyone doing this, because there are many creators with disabilities, for example, but they usually talk about their lives. I try to do it in a way that it represents everyone, not only talking about myself, but really just showing what is needed in terms of decision making, policies and all that. So I got very positive response from people, and also it has great things outside social media. Like, because of my social media, I am invited to contribute, to collaborate, and to do a lot of things outside events, panels, even going to universities to deliver seminars, also schools. I don't know. I am doing a lot of things. Even as I'm Spanish, this year and last year we are celebrating 40 years of Spain in the European Union, and I got even invited to meet the King of Spain
I
in the
saw.
celebration. Unfortunately, I could not go, and I'm so sad about it. But for me, it was really like, wow, I'm really having an impact. I'm really doing something positive here, and I want to continue doing it. So yeah, like, I'm very surprised and happy that the goal that I have when I started, it's really paying off now, no? So
Yeah, that's very interesting, and I think it's important, especially for people who are frustrated about maybe not feeling heard, that they don't think that their message is getting through. That if you express yourself, I think in a creative and constructive way, people can hear you or can at least be reached somehow. Now, your pinned tweet on, sorry, your pinned post on TikTok has something about the lack of subtitles in the EU video, and you got 144,000 views on that. Did anyone respond to that and tell you, maybe we'll do that?
Yes, this is a very funny story in a way because I another part of all of this is to try to change things inside the institution. Still, it's very niche, but for the EU institutions to be able to legislate for the rest, they need to apply everything inside, or at least is what I think. So basically. Now, don't think they have changed so much, but in live streams in the EU institution, subtitles are not available, which is surprising considering that they are translating everything in 24 different languages.
Yeah.
And we have artificial intelligence these days. It's not that we don't have tools. We have a lot of tools and also money. At least the institution, they have money to spend in accessibility. But still accessibility needs to be a must, like it's a human right. And it's something that they need to have if they want to reach everyone in the EU, because there are more than 100 million persons with disabilities in the EU. So of course you are leaving people behind if you don't put subtitles in the live streams of the EU institution. So I filmed this video that is very, very short, but it has a lot of impact. And I was contacted by people working in the EU institution saying like, I cannot believe that is real. I have never thought about it. Like, what is this? And then there is I always talk about it. So there is more. For example, every year in September, we have the State of the Union from the
Hmm.
President of the European Commission, in this case, von der Leyen. Okay. So last year, they were claiming that this speech is one of the most important speeches in the year. Fair enough. I agree. But if it's that important, why it is not accessible? Why it doesn't have live subtitles? Because nowhere, not in the live stream, not in YouTube stream, not in LinkedIn, nothing. So I posted that on LinkedIn actually because I wanted to reach people in the EU bubble. So I
Hmm.
decided to post it on LinkedIn first. And I got contacted by someone working in these live streaming services saying that it's true and they were gonna check it. And if I have some time, they can even invite me to meet them and for me, it was a win. But at the same time, this is not new. Disability organization has been fighting for this for so long. But it's interesting how we start caring if someone with some followers post that on social media, when big organization has been fighting for it for so long. But well, if I can contribute somehow, I'm happy to do that. And I also want to mention that not the commission but the parliament, they have now live subtitles during meetings, not only when they are talking about inclusion or disability, but in any topic, it's usually available. And one of the person who works for that knows me in a way because of my social media post. So I'm happy that even if it's only inside the institution, I'm contributing to this improvement.
Yeah, I think it's amazing, and it's a great story because it shows people that you can impact people, you can make a difference. And what's amazing, as you said, is how is it that the EU, with all the resources they have, are still doing some of these things? I think on the web with some technologies where you think, come on, it's 26, the tools are there. You can do better with communication, with content. Now, one of the big trends that everyone is talking about, of course, is AI. And a lot of people are afraid of what AI is doing to communication. I just want to get your personal view. A lot of people say that the creation of slop is confusing people. It's increasing misinformation. There are also some positive sides, like I think it gives different ways to see and to hear and consume information. So, what is your feeling on AI and how it's transforming communication?
I have a weird feeling with artificial intelligence. Of course, I cannot be completely against it because as a person with hearing loss, I need AI. I need AI for subtitles like this, for example. And it can be very positive for all persons with disabilities. So I cannot be against it. But I also think that it needs to be regulated in a way because for me, in terms of communication, sometimes I'm very scared. I feel that sometimes I cannot distinguish between what is AI, what is not, especially on videos. It's developing so fast,
Mhm.
but at the same time, I don't really like using AI, and I don't use AI when I create content, only for proofreading, making sure that my English grammar is okay, but not, first of all, because I'm very aware of how AI harms the environment, and I don't want to contribute, or at least I want to not using it too much. So yeah, and then about artificial intelligence, I think I'm spending so much time on social media, and I can tell when something has been written by AI and what's not. Videos and pictures is very difficult, but in terms of how people write, it's very, very obvious to me, and I never engage with anything that this has been done by artificial intelligence because it feels unrealistic. Like it feels that it's fake for me. It's not a person expressing themselves. I really prefer a post that has mistakes than something that has been made by a machine based on things that are already made. So I have this that in communication, it needs to be controlled. I really prefer, if I follow you, I want to see what you think, how you write, how you express yourself, know how you give a prompt to AI and you get the rest because you are doing it, but the person next to you is doing the same. So at the same, you are going to express yourself the same way. So what is distinguish yourself from the other one? So yeah, it's like a conversation, but I must say that I don't have a lot of information about artificial intelligence. I can talk about it from my personal point of view and saying that it can be very, very positive for persons with disabilities, but it also a bit, needs to be a bit controlled when we use it.
Yeah, and there's so many people on social media who are using AI or not using AI, using different channels. In your personal opinion, what are the voices that are emerging on social media in the conversation that are shaping Europe? Where do you see kind of the things that maybe impact you and where you think they're going to have the most impact? Where are these voices coming from?
Well, also like voices shaping Europe, of course, I think creators have a lot of impact. But I'm not saying those with the most followers. I'm saying those who have real impact. Because for me, followers and impact, it depends. You
Mhm.
can have a lot of followers, but then not really reaching anyone, or the opposite. So yes, I think creators, especially among young people, because as we said, that Instagram, TikTok, and social media platform are becoming the main source of information from young people, even if it's through actual platforms like newspapers or whatever that they have fact checked before. But people go before to social media than maybe read a newspaper or something in general and based on what Eurostat says. So I think, yes, creators can be shaping Europe. I see, for example, a lot of members of the European Parliament who are very strong and big on social media. So I think that's worth looking at and reflecting, especially to people who don't really know, and they can believe that what a member of the European Parliament is saying is the actual view of the European Parliament, and stuff like that. So yes, in my view, creators and people with a lot of impact in social media, they can be really shaping not Europe, but maybe the conversation around it.
Now, when you meet people who are starting their career, maybe they're students deciding what to study, or people who just graduated and are looking for opportunities, and they tell you, how do I get an exciting job in this very complicated environment? How do I find work when AI might be taking the job? So what should I study? And what is your advice to them about the right mindset, the attitude, and maybe the skills? I mean, what do you tell them they should do?
Yeah, it is difficult. It's something that a question that many people ask me. People are struggling to find jobs nowadays. I don't want to believe or think that many people are using AI to replace a person in a job. Uh, but yeah, I understand the struggle. I would say that you have to follow really what you want to do, trying your best, just like saying yes to any opportunities that you have and trying to shape your path. And the opportunity will come or not come, or life will tell you. Especially if you want to work in new affairs, it's a very complicated environment, especially nowadays, because there are many people who want to land a job here, and I totally understand, because the job market everywhere is a bit complicated, specifically in some countries that young people don't are not getting paid enough, or you only see unpaid internship, or many people who have studied in universities and are very very well prepared, but then they apply for a job and you find like 500 other applications. So I understand, and this job market things that in Brussels offers quite good opportunities, I will say, but then it's very difficult to land those opportunities. And I was in that position myself. So I always say that even if you don't land in a job here, it doesn't mean that you are not good enough, because there are many external factors that affect that decision. Let's say the number of candidates, let's say personal preferences, let's say any other thing. So I always recommend to just really follow what you really want, and life will tell. And think that in many cases it's not only you, that many other things affect. So try to stay positive in a way.
So stay positive and look for what you like. Hopefully they can use that, but and no specific skill or degree that you think people should look for or avoid.
Well, avoid, I don't know, but I would say that it's important to stand out somehow, differentiate yourself, but it's becoming very, very difficult nowadays. At the end of the day, here, everyone has a degree, everyone has a master, two, three languages, experiences in many different countries, internship in the EU institutions. So it's important to maybe find your niche and try to stand out that way, you know. And that's about the skills. For me, it's very important being able to work with others, collaboration, networking, and ask questions if you're not sure about something.
I think that's great advice.
Recommendations of the week.
Now, you have some recommendations of channels for our audience. So what do you recommend? Who should we follow?
Well, I have two recommendations, and these are two creators that have nothing to do with the European Union. They don't post anything related to the European Union, but I like them for two reasons. So one is one girl called Katarina Doria. She actually talks about AI, but AI ethics. And I love it because the first time I heard about it, I found her on my feed. She did a very viral video about Grok. And when we had this news that Grok was undressing women, and she was like, no, 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 Grok is not undressing anyone. It's men who are doing it, talking about ethics in artificial intelligence. So from that moment, I started to follow her, and I really like how she approached all of it because she explains in just long, short videos about artificial intelligence, and she has a lot of engagement. And I really like it. I recommend you to follow it if you want to learn more about ethics in artificial intelligence, what you should do, what you should not do, why, for example, it's important not to post minors, your kids, on social media. So it's very, very interesting. I'm learning so much with her. And the second one is Ines Rodriguez. She's a creator from Spain. Well, not really a creator. She's very famous on social media, but it's not her main job in a way. But she does collaboration and she creates content, and she has a disability. But the way she approaches disability is the way I like, talking about it in an inclusive way, not talking about her, but teaching her audience how they should do things, for example, in terms of accessibility in content creation, having subtitles, having actual contrast so people can read, using plain language, and making sure that if you post an image that it has alternative text so people with screen readers can read it. So I really like how she talks about disability and herself, and I really recommend it to follow her because she's really great. I really like it. But yeah, a normal person really. So I recommend these two people. And what about you? I want to hear if you have some recommendations.
Well, I want to recommend the EU influencer Instagram channel that Sevim created for people to find new voices in the EU space. And I find that for the moment I'm doing a lot of AI exploration. And so what I like to do, actually, with the latest version of ChatGPT, they have the voice thing actually allows you to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And I find that when you want to explore a topic, you can say, tell me where I can find information on this topic. Okay, go deeper. Tell me where there is a course on this. Can you show me something more academic? So I like this idea of using the AI tools as an exploratory tool to learn about specific topics. And so those would be my two takeaways. But I want to thank you for your really interesting story, for your very, very useful insights and tips. And I think you are part of the community that is changing the way Europe is communicating and forcing the institutions to do better. I think like your TikTok video on the subtitles, it can be very simple, and it can also be very important because actually it's simple steps that lead to bigger change. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for being with us, and looking forward to staying connected and hopefully seeing you in September at the EU Influencer event, where we will be talking about this and much, much more. Thank you very much, and have a fantastic day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Philip. Thank you. Looking forward to attend to the EU Influencer event.
Thank you. Bye for now.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of the ZNL podcast. Did you like it? If so, please share it on your social media, subscribe, and give us a comment. We will see you again on the next episode. Until then, remember, stay always one step ahead.